So I told myself that I was going to create one of these videos, and finally have time. So this video is, of course, about a VBAC, about having VBACs. When I was pregnant the second time around, after having a C-section of my first daughter, I didn't think that there was enough supportive information available online. Of course, you can find the occasional mom blog, and there's a lot of websites that are dedicated, or programs that are dedicated, or groups that are dedicated to women having VBACs. None were local for me, so I figured, you know what, if this works, I'm going to do a video. And even if 5 people only watch it, and I encourage or support or give 5 people a little less fear about trying to go forward with a VBAC, that works for me. So first, who am I? Shayna. I've got 2 daughters. One is 3.5, and the other is almost 10 weeks old. So the birth story, first time around, made it to 40 weeks and 1 day, and I got induced. So at the hospital, I guess you call it pre-labor. It really wasn't labor. They broke my water, all that fun stuff. And I attempted to do this without an epidural, realized it didn't work, and then asked for one. They attempted to give me an epidural 3 times, 3 or 4, I cannot remember. And then eventually patted me on the back and said it wasn't gonna work. I don't know how much time transpired from then until the physician walked in and said that the baby's heart rate was really low and recommended a emergency C-section. Of course, please, I want a healthy baby. I don't care how I have a healthy baby. Please, let's have the C-section. Because my epidural didn't work, I was put completely under. So I woke up an hour or so later and met her. Definitely not what I had pictured the entire pregnancy of how my birth would go, but I brought home a healthy baby, so that's the number one. Healing after, while having a newborn and trying to figure all that out, I think it caused more stress than if I would have had a normal birth, or a vaginal birth. I wouldn't call it normal, vaginal birth. And I just knew that if I were to do it again, I was going to try for a VBAC. And I had heard about VBACs before, so I just had it in my head. I didn't know if I would be a good candidate, but at that point, struggling to pick up my newborn, struggling to get out of bed, struggling to walk around, struggling to walk upstairs, all of that stuff right after birth, I did not want if I had any other children. So when my husband and I decided that we were going to try to get pregnant again, I already had it in my head, I will be trying for a VBAC. If it doesn't work, hey, it doesn't work, but I am going to try. And everything you read online about VBACs, scary, you know, chance of uterine rupture, you can die, baby, you know, gets harmed, awful, awful stuff. And you think to yourself, why would I ever put my baby at risk? Let's just do a repeat C-section. But there are risks associated with repeat C-sections as well. So I knew in my head, as long as I can do this in a safe way, I wanted to try for a VBAC. Number 1 advice I would recommend, find a physician that is truly an advocate of VBACs. Not someone that does them if they're emergency and they just want to get the baby out. I'm talking about someone that likes doing VBACs for whatever personal or professional reasons that they have. And I found a physician that started my prenatal care who's awesome. I think I started seeing him at 9 weeks, and I saw him up until 35 weeks. Proponent of VBACs, great guy. Recommendations, of course, they always question, why did you have the original C-section? There's various reasons why a VBAC, if it was because of some sort of health reason why you had to have a cesarean, you may not be a good candidate, so definitely check with your physician. But my daughter's heart rate was the reason. There was no other physical or medical reasons why I couldn't have done a vaginal birth, so I was a good candidate. Went through my entire prenatal care. Other than that, he did recommend not to remain healthy and within a healthy weight throughout my pregnancy, so that doesn't cause extra complications with trying to have a VBAC. And also, he recommended that I not go to my due date or over. Now, having already gone over with the first baby by a day, and who knows how much longer I would have gone over had I not gotten induced. So I already had it in my head. They say it's going to be similar to the first baby. I will likely make it to that due date or further along. Got to 35 weeks, started to get anxious, which is normal for every pregnant woman about that time. That's when you start really worrying about everything. And I, after discussing my physician, made the decision to switch practitioners, mainly because one, he was a great guy, but he was practicing out of a smaller hospital. And I just had it in my head that if anything went wrong, I just wanted to be somewhere where they could immediately handle it, take care of it. Also, I had a feeling that I was going to go over my due date, and I really didn't want to be, I wouldn't say he would pressure, he would never pressure, but I didn't want to be almost guilted or feel guilty for not doing a repeat C-section before the due date. So I found a new practitioner who is a champion of VBACs. Awesome, awesome person. And she saw me from 35 weeks and even scheduled me for appointments up to 42, and then told me like at that point they'd bring me in every other day and we do some sort of stress test, and if I made it to that point. I didn't make it to that point. I made it to 40 weeks and 4 or 5 days, one of them, 40 weeks, 4 or 5 days, and I went into labor naturally. It was a Sunday, about 2:30 p.m., started to have contractions, wasn't sure, you never really are sure, and they started to come pretty close together. So within an hour, my husband and I were already in the car on our way to the hospital just to get checked out. So I got there, I was already at 1 centimeter, which is not very far, and they typically would send you home, but because I was a VBAC, they kept me for monitoring, and they didn't want to send me home because of the risk, of course, with VBACs. Within 12 hours, she was born. She was healthy, which is, again, the number one priority, but the birth was awesome. Epidural worked first time around. I didn't play any games. I knew that I wanted one. So when they came in, I let them know the first time they tried this, they said my back, something about the curvature, the epidural didn't work. He did for a second. There you are. It's working. All is well. Contractions before the epidural weren't bad at all because I didn't get Pitocin, and Pitocin, I hear, I'm not a medical professional, makes your contractions a little stronger. So I was able to actually manage them pretty well until the anesthetist came in to do my epidural. The birth was great. I labored for, not that long. She was out in 2 or 3 pushes. I was awake, which, hey, that was awesome. I immediately held her and started nursing. That's what I always envisioned and pictured. Everything went well, and I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel guilty for not doing a repeat C-section because I had adequate support. I had a supportive physician. I had 2 supportive physicians, and I had my support system. And also, I myself recognize that with a toddler at home and having a new baby, I wanted to not have the restrictions that they put on mothers after a C-section, which you can't pick up your anything over 30 pounds or something. You can't walk upstairs. You can't drive. Didn't want any of those things. So I knew that this for my family would be the best option. So I'm going to do other videos. This was a little longer than I expected, but I wanted to just offer a little anecdotal information about my success with having a VBAC, so that this fear-based way of approaching childbirth can kind of be erratic. I'm just tired of reading it where they, first thing you read is about the chance of uterine rupture, but they don't really go into too much detail about how repeat C-sections are also pretty risky. And I think that a lot of physicians, out of fear of being sued, they probably don't want to do VBACs, or maybe they don't have the staffing at the hospital that can probably do a VBAC, because there are requirements in order for them to be able to do a VBAC, and of course discuss that with your physician. Some things like having having someone like available to do an emergency C-section that is at the hospital all the time, not having to be called in, and emergency anesthesia that's at the hospital the whole time, not having to be called in. Those are things that are required in order to do VBAC. So talk to your physicians. Do not be afraid. Do not feel guilty about wanting to do a vaginal birth after having a C-section. Do not read the nonsense you read online and get afraid that you're putting your child at risk or yourself at risk. Go talk to your physician. You can have a successful VBAC, and there's nothing wrong with even questioning it. All right, thanks.